Hey creators, Aimon here, and in this episode of Creative Philosophy, we're talking about my top 5 habits for a fulfilling creative life. Let's get into it. So my number 1 habit for a fulfilling creative life is to create every day for at least 30 minutes. And the easiest way to get this done is to actually schedule it, right? So however you choose to do that, whether it's in your calendar, your digital workstation, on your phone, a reminder, however works for you. But if you schedule that in, say between 7:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. every single day, I'm going to create for 30 minutes. Now for me, that's music production. Every day at about 7:30 p.m. I sit down and try and produce music, right? Sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later, and I just show up for 30 minutes. Whether I'm moving samples around, trying to work on one particular thing in a creative project, whatever my goal is, I'm going to work on something for 30 minutes, okay? And just doing this every single day and getting into the habit of doing this is just gonna make it so much easier because, a lot of times as an artist, as you would know, you show up and it just doesn't work. Like today is just not the day, right? But there's always something that you could be doing. As I said, sometimes I'm just reorganizing samples, and then more often than not, I'll find a sample that I really like, whack it into the song that I'm working on at the time, and we're off, So obviously if you want a more fulfilling creative life, when you're creating every single day, regardless of how you feel, regardless of if you want to do it, regardless of if you're making anything actually worth listening to or watching or whatever it may be, this is going to increase your discipline as an artist. And overall, rather than skipping 5 days because you don't feel like it, because you don't have inspiration, you're still putting in 2.5 hours, and more often than not, as I said, that will turn into more than that. At least half of my sessions when I don't really want to do anything, I'll sit down for half an hour and I end up creating for an hour and a half, you know what I mean? And I end up carving that ice sculpture away to actually make it, better than it was before. So my second habit, and this is a little left of field, is having a written out dream life plan and life KPIs. So what does that mean? Well, a dream life plan is essentially sitting down and writing down, in 5 years time, what would my dream life look like, and write down 5 to 10 very specific things that if you are achieving those things at that time, then that would be considered your dream life, okay? And then underneath that, you have to write down your key performance indicators or KPIs, which is a business term, right? But if you can integrate this business term into your life, if you are performing these 5 to 10 key performance indicators, I've only got 5 of them, then I think that I will achieve that dream life that I have written down, okay? And the reason this is a really effective, habit to have in place and to just look at this every single day as an artist is because, you wake up every day and you know where you're going. You look at this and you're like, oh, this is where I'm going, right here. And everyone talks about manifesting and that kind of thing. But the reality of the situation is, your brain goes towards the thing that it thinks about all the time. It's just that simple. So when you have this written down and you've decided that's what my dream life looks like, and this is what I need to do to get there, as a creative artist, then you're naturally just going to move towards those things. So my third habit for a fulfilling creative life is meditation. Now, obviously everyone bangs on about this a lot. I've mentioned this in a few videos recently as well, but ultimately creative people generally have a higher frequency of thoughts. They've got more thoughts during the day, okay? And when you have more thoughts, there's a high chance of some of those thoughts being negative, you know what I mean? And so if you're not meditating, you're just throwing away your ability to sift through those thoughts and actually keep the ones that are relative to you, that are actually going to help you on your creative journey. And you're making it harder to actually discard the ones that aren't useful to you at all. So because of this, meditation has changed my life so much. I'm up to 10 minutes per day now, but it did take me a very long time to get there. So if you can't do it, just do 1 minute a day or 2 minutes a day. Everyone has time for that. And it's literally just about focusing. And when you notice a thought, let that thought go. It's just a practice. It's like going to the gym. You just need to get reps in. And the better you get at that, the more present you will be, and the better your life as an artist will be, especially when you're creating, because you're not going to be sitting there being like, I can't do this. I suck. I'm never going to make it as an artist. Nothing matters. What's the point in existing, Which we all go through as artists, right? Hopefully it's not just me. So yeah, you will identify with less of these thoughts and ultimately have a more fulfilling creative life. My fourth habit is challenging resistance. And this is explored in the book War of Art, which if you haven't read, it's a staple as an artist. You definitely need to check that out. And honestly, I read it at least once a year. It will be a good wake-up call to just how much you're slacking off because of resistance. And there's a lot of different things that are labeled as resistance. Almost everything is labeled as resistance. And in fact, you watching this video right now could be you resisting creating art. So if you can be aware of what is resistance in your life and what is holding you back from doing what you actually want to be doing, which is creating, You know, resistance is jumping on Instagram and then just getting lost in that for 30 minutes, you know? So easy to do, am I right? Especially as an artist, there's just so many distractions, you know? But every time you notice yourself resisting doing the thing you need to be doing, that's fantastic. Because the more you can be aware of that, the more you can label that as resistance, and the more art you will create, because the less time you will spend in resistance. So the fifth habit is to limit cheap dopamine spending. Now, one of my recent episodes was on this entirely, so check that out if you want to. But honestly, if you're spending too much dopamine on cheap habits, then you are not going to have any left for when you actually need it. Like when you're creating your art, you know, when you're actually in your creative process, and then you will experience resistance because all of a sudden you don't feel like doing it anymore and you want that cheap dopamine, which is when you go to Instagram and get that cheap dopamine, which will make it even harder. So it's this whole cycle. You know, dopamine doesn't care, okay? It just wants more of itself. So you've got to train yourself to actually get it from the good stuff, like actually creating your art, you know? So if you can limit cheap dopamine spending, the more you will have for the right stuff. So creators, these are my 5 habits that I'm working on at the moment for a more fulfilling creative life. Hopefully you've gotten some value out of this. If I've missed any habits as well, you know, anything that you're doing, I would love to hear what you're doing in the comments. Let me know. But yeah, I'll see you in the next episode.